He gave us the prophecy. We asked for it, so he gave it to us. We asked him to take it away, he took it away from us. He knew it wouldn't last. The key for the Aseret Adibris were not the words. I told you this once before. What's the right that the Eibush is a misnagid? That he came on time to the shiur. He came before the students. What's the right that the Eibush is a chassid? That he's giving one shiur, doesn't say a single chiddush. The whole Aseret Adibris, all of them we had from before. Most of them are the Sheva Mitzvahs B'neiach, and the few that aren't, we got in Mora, Kibbutz Aim, Shabbos. So what's the point? The point in Chassidus is we want us to Torah wants us to know that Matan Torah was not about the ideas. It was about meeting God face to face. It was about the prophet. It was about meeting God. That's what happened. That was the point. When you see God, you know Him. When you know Him, you take Him seriously.
So if they didn't check it out, they would have kept that prophecy, even though they died?
Do you know the story?
No, I guess not.
I'll tell you the story. In 1969, we landed on the moon, right? The 13th Apollo landed on the moon. I think Armstrong just recently passed away, died. He was a special person, Neil Armstrong, interesting man. At that time, Chabad was in its infancy, right? I mean, Chabad was 20 years old, but compared to what it is today, it was very small. But it was very close-knit, and the Rebbe was deeply involved. There was a newspaper, there was a radio commentator, talk show, named Barry Farber. You have to understand, nobody ever saw radio as a medium for talk shows. Radio was for news and for music. Every station was music. The idea of talk shows, which today is dominating the world, was in its infancy. And it was on WMCA, it was on those minor stations. The big stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, nobody had talk shows. They had news, or they had music, or they had entertainment. The idea of people coming and talking, which today is like big, was very small. He was one of the pioneers in the field of talk shows. Barry Farber was a Jew from North Carolina. He sounded like a Southerner straight from the Civil War. He was a very not from Jew, but he had Yiddish heart. I remember him coming to Crown Heights, tall man. He did an interview with Zalman Posner, Oliver Sholem, and Professor Veld Green, Oliver Sholem, because it was a Pagisha. And they came into the studio and he talked to them. And he asked them really hard questions. He was an intelligent man. He was a learned, knowledge man. And he told them, of course, the person desecrates the Sabbath, gets stoned. If a guy puts a light on Shabbos, he gets stoned. What's this, killing people? I mean, this is the questions that the secular world asks. You know, you look at the Bible, and the Bible is angry, and it's killing people here, there, and everywhere. Of course, nothing is that simple. They just don't understand the Bible. But this is the criticism of religion, is that it's so angry. You know, that's the way it goes. So they asked him this question. It was on a Motzei Shabbos, a Saturday night. Or maybe it wasn't the Shabbos, maybe it was Thursday night. Zalman Posner was a very smart man. He was a shliach of the Rebbe his whole life. Gave him a very logical answer. He said to him that, yeah, it says in the Bible that if a person commits this and this sin, he gets stoned. But what it doesn't say in the Bible is that you have two witnesses who have to see him, catch him in the act. No circumstantial evidence, to see him do it. And more importantly, they have to warn him within 5 seconds of him doing the act. If they warn him a half a minute before and then he commits the act, we can still consider it an accident. We're not machal b'shegeg lamezid, clearly, and you can't put him to death. See, he basically said that the laws in the Bible are practically the laws of capital punishment. For a person to get killed in Beis Din, he has to want to die, you know, like the Mekoshesh. You kill somebody, you have to be warned before, right? So the guy warned you, if you pull the trigger, you're going to get killed. Count to 6 and bang, bang, you're not chayev. Why? Because if it passes the time of what's the lashon? Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Yirmiyah, the time that it says you have to warn him with Toich Kedei Dibur. So he gave a logical answer. It's a good answer. Unbeknownst to Rabbi Zalman Posner, the Rebbe sat in his house and listened to the entire interview on the radio. And the next Shabbos, the Rebbe spoke about it. And I was at a Fabrengen where Rabbi Posner told the story very proudly, how proud he was. He had no idea the Rebbe was listening. But he was so delighted, he was so touched that the Rebbe listened to him. And the Rebbe said, the answer that he gave is a logical answer, but it's not the right answer. The Rebbe said, he should have said the following. They just sent the Apollo 13 to the moon, right? Which it's 4 different crafts. You have to have a craft that takes you out of the atmosphere, a craft that takes you to the moon, a landing craft that lands on the moon, and a capsule. It's very complex. That rocket is very complicated. Then it comes apart in pieces, and when you come back, this tiny little triangular thing plots into the ocean with a few parachutes, and the rest of it's lost. With the way they went to the moon in those days, it's not like today where they have these shuttles that, the airplanes, they come back. It was very, very expensive and very complicated. It was a lot of pieces. And America in those days prided itself that they built everything in America. You know what happened because of the Apollo program? Americans went back to school and became engineers. They became smart. I think it's time for us to find why. If I was running for president, I would say, like Kennedy said, by the end of the decade, we should be free from use of any fossil fuels for energy. And take all the American yuklach who are busy on their phones, send them back to school, let them become mathematicians and engineers, and do the technology to make us have clean energy and free energy. But I'm not running for president, so don't worry, it's not going to happen. The oil companies will still make a lot of money and put greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. But that's what happened. America became smart. Everybody went back to school, they became engineers, because they needed thousands of engineers. And they would talk about which part of the rocket came from. Every one of the 50 states contributed to that system. The Rebbe says they sent that massive body to the moon. If they miss one screw, what happens? The whole mission could be aborted. The Rebbe was careful not to say that it could blow up, but the whole mission could be aborted. The Rebbe said, the Eibishter gave you a Torah, and he tells you this is the key to life. And you're asking what happens if you're missing a screw? You have a living example. This is what the Rebbe said at the Fabrengen. Now, I'm going to ask you, David Yankiv, with all I know you're a Lubavitcher Chassid and you drank the Kool-Aid and you're brainwashed. Does what the Rebbe say to you just now sit comfortably with you? Do you understand the Machon and the Nimshon? You do. Then you're a big tzaddik. Most people get nervous. You know why? How could you compare a mitzvah to a screw? The screw would cause the rocket to blow up. If you don't do the mitzvah, nothing happens. The answer is you don't see what happens, but something serious happens. 1 second. Equal to missing a screw on the Apollo. What's the Rebbe's point? We don't take mitzvahs as seriously as we take rockets. Because with the rocket, the cause and the effect is in front of your eyes. You put the, do you remember when the second shuttle blew up? In 85, which is 40 years ago, it was called the Challenger. It blew up right after it took off, within seconds. In the last 20 years, a shuttle blew up on re-entry. And there was nothing left. No people, no nothing. Why did it blow up? Because they surrounded the shuttle with foam, with what does it call it? The stuff that this is made, the cups are made out of styrofoam to protect it from the heat. And when the rocket took off, a foam hit the side of the shuttle and took off one tile. This big, tiny little hole. But those tiles were heat resistant to 10,000 degrees of heat, 15,000 degrees of heat. On re-entry, the amount, you know what it is? When the rocket is re-entering the atmosphere, it's moving at 18,000 miles an hour. It's like crashing into a wall. The amount of friction, we don't understand that the atmosphere is buoyant. The air is like water, it's just thinner. You walk through it, you don't understand it. But if you're moving fast enough, the air can break your face. At 18,000 miles an hour, they crash into the atmosphere. That tiny little hole let so much heat into the inside. That rocket, it tore it up from the inside. One tile. So you don't have to have das to understand why the rocket, the tiles have to be there. You can see it with your eyes. But if a person misses a mitzvah, I'm asking you. That's Moshe's job. That's what the Rebbe is saying. Missing a mitzvah is like a tile missing on a shuttle. But when it comes to the shuttle, no one has to explain it to you. You see it with your naked eye. That's Moshe's job. Now, did I answer your question?
Why do they need that now instead of a dollar? Who says the difference is now they...
Because now the Yidden stop being Nevi'im. In last week's Pasha and Yisrei, that's right after they gave up, Hashem says to Moshe, yesterday when they saw me, They saw the rocket blow up. But now that they don't see me, you have to give it to them.
But they couldn't anyway because they died.
He brought them back to life right away.
No, they saw it.
And
they
they
got it.
so
They
someone
didn't
took it away after they said, "Oh, I can't do this."
That's correct. 10 times.
So why?
So Hashem is saying to Moshe, had they stuck it out, I don't know how that would have worked, and they would have each one become a prophet. Then to quote of him, Baruch, we don't know what we needed rebbe for.
We'd all be dead.
But now that the Jews chickened out and they're not going to be prophets, it's on you not to teach them the Torah. You have to make God real to them. You have to raise up every Jew to take a mitzvah as seriously. I'm sitting, I feel such a hypocrite. Yesterday was a day. A day has 24 hours, right? 24 hours. 24 times 60 is how many minutes? It's a lot of minutes. 1,500 minutes, a lot of minutes. Do I have an account of every minute of yesterday? I have an account of a lot of the minutes. I have an account of most of the minutes. I'm not talking about them, I slept yet. But I wasted minutes. And that's my big test. I waste time. I waste time because I'm tired and I get lazy. I don't do bad things, but I waste time. I'm a servant of God. We're all servants of God. A servant of God is busy every second. You miss a minute, you missed a tile on a shuttle. But we don't think of it that way because nothing happens. It's just nice. It's not a question of punishment. It's a question of how important it is. Moshe Rabbeinu's job is to make it real. And when it's real, you do it. When does Hashem say it to Moshe? When the Yidden stop bringing the Nevi'im. And they're not going to see God anymore. So they're not going to see the shuttle blowing up, so to speak, proverbially speaking. Now Moshe's job is not to frighten them. Moshe's job is to make them earnest. That's what the Rebbe says to Zalman Posner. You gave a logical answer, but you forgot the most important thing. That we're talking about God. When Barry Farber asks Zalman Posner, why do you get stoned for not keeping Shabbos? What Zalman Posner should have said, who said to keep Shabbos? Now, of course, Barry Farber is going to say, some whack job is in desert 3,000 years ago. And Zalman says, no, God Almighty said. I want to ask you. He should say to Barry Farber, if God tells you to do something, you're going to mess around? God said to keep Shabbos. That's what Zalman Posner missed. He defended the Torah. But he defended the Torah without presenting what the Torah is. This is God's book. It's serious business.